Chicago woke up wrapped in a faint mist, which slowly dissipated as the sun caressed the city's skyscrapers. In the Gold Coast neighborhood, Lucas Hale stood by his window, taking in the panoramic view as he did every morning. The apartment, decorated with sleek modern furniture and technological art pieces, reflected his personality: impeccable, sophisticated, and somewhat cold. Yet, behind this facade was a man trapped in his own loneliness. Lucas often told himself this was a necessary choice. He believed emotional connections were distractions, a luxury he couldn't afford. Evelyn was the only person who knew Lucas well enough to sense when something was bothering him. She knew he shut down whenever the conversation veered into personal territory. Over the years, she had become something of a silent confidant, even if Lucas rarely admitted it. Beyond impressing with his vision for Zenith Robotics, Lucas needed to demonstrate that he wasn't just a tech genius, but also someone capable of forming genuine connections with others. A seemingly simple demand for many, but for him, it was nearly impossible. That's how he found himself in Wicker Park, a vibrant neighborhood full of personality, where small cafes and used bookstores lined the tree-shaded streets. There, he wandered into a local cafe called Maple Brews, where the aroma of freshly ground coffee beans seemed to offer a kind of solace. Lily Carter, her brown hair tied in a messy bun, moved briskly between the tables, resolving orders with a smile and handling a disgruntled customer without losing her composure. Her green eyes sparkled with determination, as if nothing could break her spirit. Yet the slight slump of her shoulders and the fatigue in her gaze told another story. When she approached to deliver his order, Lucas, in an uncharacteristic impulse, struck up a conversation. "You seem pretty good at handling difficult people." "Her too." "Actually, I need your help," he began, catching her attention again. "I have an important dinner in a few days and, well, I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend for one night. I can pay you well for it. It's a complicated situation, but I saw how you handle people. I think it could work." "I'll think about it," she finally said. "I'm not sure yet," he replied. Maybe that strange opportunity was exactly what she had been looking for. The following afternoon, Lily arrived at the address Lucas had provided. When she saw the towering glass and steel building in the heart of Gold Coast, her palms began to sweat. She had no idea what a life like Lucas Hale's could be like, but from what she could tell, it was worlds apart from the chaotic, humble existence she was used to. Even so, she took a deep breath and entered the lobby, where a uniformed doorman escorted her to a private elevator. He looked completely at ease, yet distant, as if the environment was an extension of his own personality, sophisticated yet isolated. "You must be the young woman Lucas told me about. Nice to meet you. I'm Evelyn. The dinner will be in 3 days at Le Bijou, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Alejandro and his wife Isabella are very observant people, so we need to appear natural as a couple. But how exactly do you expect me, a waitress with no knowledge of your world, to convince these people that I belong in your life? I want you to get a sense of what I do, and I'll also teach you a few things about Alejandro and Isabella's interests. It's crucial that you're prepared to interact with them." Despite the seriousness of his tone, there was something about the way Lucas spoke that began to intrigue her. He didn't seem like someone used to asking for help, much less relying on another person. They spent mornings together in his office at Zenith Robotics headquarters, where he introduced her to basic concepts of artificial intelligence and automation. Lucas was impressed by how quickly Lily picked things up, while she, in turn, was captivated by the passion he displayed when discussing his projects. It was as if in that space, Lucas allowed himself to be more than the cold, calculating man he appeared to be. "Is this how you spend your days?" Lily asked during a break while examining a prototype of a domestic robot. "That's ironic, coming from someone who seems to live only for work." And despite their differences, she began to feel an unexpected empathy for him. On the afternoon of the second day, Evelyn invited Lily for tea while Lucas was busy with a meeting. Sitting in the spacious, well-lit kitchen, the housekeeper shared more about the man Lily was starting to understand. "Lucas is a good person, but he carries many ghosts from his past," Evelyn said, stirring sugar into her tea. "He lost his father at a very young age and always felt the need to protect his family. But at the same time, that's what distanced him from everyone. He made work his top priority." Lily listened silently, sensing that Evelyn had more to say. "Do you know what happened to his mother?" she asked cautiously. Evelyn sighed. "She's still alive, but they live in completely different worlds now. He rarely visits her. I'm not sure if it's because of a lack of time or fear of confronting certain truths." Those words stayed with Lily for the rest of the day. As she and Lucas returned to their training, She found herself looking at him differently. He wasn't just a reclusive man, he seemed to be someone who had lost himself in his relentless pursuit of success. Finally, the night of the dinner arrived. Lily, dressed in an elegant red gown Evelyn had helped her pick out, looked almost unrecognizable. When Lucas saw her, he paused for a few moments before offering a quiet compliment. "You look perfect." Lily smiled, slightly self-conscious. "Don't get used to it. This is just for tonight." "Of course," he replied, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of something deeper. As they got into the car that would take them to the restaurant, both knew they were about to face more than just a business dinner. The connection forming between them was undeniable, even if neither was ready to acknowledge it. The restaurant Le Bijou was a masterpiece of luxury. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a soft glow on the tables draped in pristine white linens, surrounded by velvet chairs. Chicago's elite gathered there, speaking in hushed tones and savoring dishes that resembled works of art. Lucas and Lily entered the dining room, immediately drawing attention. He, in a perfectly tailored dark grey suit. She, in a striking red dress that exuded natural elegance, despite the nervous energy she radiated. Lily tried to keep her palms from sweating as Alejandro Torres and his wife Isabella rose to greet them. Alejandro, a confident man in his 50s, exuded charm. His neatly styled grey hair and well-groomed beard added to his commanding presence, while Isabella, in a classic navy blue dress and warm smile, embodied grace and sophistication. "Lucas!" Alejandro greeted him with enthusiasm, shaking his hand firmly. "And this must be Lily, the famous girlfriend you mentioned." Lily laughed nervously and returned Alejandro's firm handshake. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Lucas has spoken a lot about you." Isabella gave Lily a discreet yet warm once-over before smiling kindly. "He really does have good taste. Please, sit." The dinner began with formal introductions and light conversation. Lucas, as always, was impeccable in his delivery. He spoke with passion about the innovative projects at Zenith Robotics, detailing his ambitious plans to revolutionize industrial automation and modern living. Alejandro listened intently, occasionally interjecting with technical questions. Meanwhile, Lily drew from what she had learned in the past few days, offering well-timed comments that impressed everyone at the table. "Impressive," Alejandro said with a smile. "You know more about artificial intelligence than I expected. Lucas must have taught you well." Lily returned the smile, maintaining her composure. "Lucas is an excellent teacher, but I'm naturally curious. It's hard not to be intrigued by something so groundbreaking." Lucas glanced at Lily briefly, his expression betraying a mix of surprise and admiration. He hadn't expected her to perform so well, but her ability to adapt made him respect her even more. For the first time, he felt he didn't have to shoulder the burden of the evening alone. She wasn't just a part of the facade, she was truly by his side. Sabella, who had been attentively observing everything, leaned toward Lily during dessert. "So Lily, what do you do when you're not keeping geniuses like Lucas company?" Lily hesitated for a second, but decided to be honest. "I'm a waitress at a cafe, but my true passion is writing. I'm working on a book, or at least trying to." Isabella smiled sincerely. "That's fascinating. What's your book about?" "It's fiction, but it's based on my life. It's about perseverance, about finding meaning even in the hardest situations," Lily answered, realizing she was beginning to let her guard down. Isabella seemed genuinely interested. "That's wonderful. You have to let me know when it's published. I'd love to read it." The conversation flowed naturally, and as Lucas watched Lily interact, he realized that it wasn't just him being evaluated that evening. Alejandro and Isabella were clearly charmed by her. Somehow, this made Lucas feel vulnerable. He wasn't used to seeing someone else take the spotlight from him, but instead of jealousy, he felt proud. When dinner ended, Alejandro raised his wine glass for a toast. "To Zenith Robotics and the future," he said with a meaningful smile. "I'm confident this partnership will be fruitful, Lucas. And I must say, Lily, you brought something special to the evening. It's rare to see Lucas so relaxed. Maybe you're the secret behind it." Everyone laughed, but Lucas looked away, feeling the weight of Alejandro's words. Relaxed? He didn't even know what that felt like. Yet he couldn't deny that with Lily by his side, he felt different, more human perhaps. Back at Lucas's apartment, the silence in the car was comfortable. Lily stared out the window, processing the night's events, while Lucas seemed lost in thought. When they arrived, Evelyn was in the kitchen, making a cup of tea. "So, how was the big dinner?" she asked, curious. Lily was the first to answer, smiling. "I think we managed to impress. Alejandro seemed pleased, at least." Lucas nodded, still reflecting on the evening. "Yes, it was a success. And you did much better than I could have imagined, Lily. Thank you for that. Lily smiled, surprised by the gratitude in his voice. It was rare to see Lucas so genuine. You're welcome. It was interesting to see your world, but I'll admit, it's exhausting. Evelyn laughed as she poured her tea. Well, if you manage to impress Alejandro, that's already a victory. He's not easily won over. As Evelyn retreated to her room, Lily grabbed her bag to leave, but before heading out, she turned to Lucas. So, I guess my part of the deal is done. Lucas looked at her for a moment, hesitating. Maybe, he started with an expression she couldn't quite read. But I'd like you to stay. Not for another dinner, but to talk. Lily raised her eyebrows, surprised. Talk? You don't strike me as the kind of person who's into that. Lucas gave a faint smile. Something rare. Maybe it's time to change that. Something about that sentence made Lily's heart race. She hesitated for a moment, but eventually set her bag down and sat on the couch. All right, Hale. I'm listening. Lucas sat down next to her, keeping a respectful distance but close enough for them to feel each other's presence. He didn't know exactly where to begin, but for the first time in years he felt willing to open a door he had always kept locked. The silence in the apartment was broken only by the distant sound of city traffic and the occasional creak of the modern furniture. Lucas, still seated on the couch beside Lily, took a deep breath, a rare act for him. It was as if every word he was about to say carried the weight of years of unspoken thoughts. I always had the impression that hard work would be the answer to everything, he began, looking out the window at the city lights. I grew up in a home where we had very little. My mom did everything she could, and even the impossible, to provide for us, and I felt responsible for making sure she'd never have to worry about money again. Lily listened closely, leaning forward slightly. The vulnerable tone in Lucas's voice was something she hadn't expected to hear. When I was a kid, the old radios I used to take apart were more than just a distraction, he continued. They were my way of dreaming, of creating something no one could take away from me. When I got the scholarship to Carnegie Mellon, it felt like all the sacrifice had been worth it. But he paused, as if carefully choosing his words. Not everything turned out the way I expected. Lily noticed the tension in his face and instinctively placed a hand on his arm. Was it your girlfriend at the time? Was she the one who left you like this? Lucas gave a faint, lopsided smile, shaking his head. She was part of it, yes. It's funny how rejection can shape the way you see people. When she left me for someone who could offer a more luxurious lifestyle, I promised myself I'd never depend on anyone again, that I'd be enough. Lily felt a pang in her chest. She understood what it was like to carry scars from the past, but at the same time she could see Lucas was using that promise as armor, a barrier keeping him from making any genuine connections. But what about your family? She asked gently. You've mentioned them, but you never talk much about them. Lucas looked away, his gaze fixed on the city outside. That's another complicated chapter. After I moved to Chicago and Zenith started growing, I drifted apart. At first I told myself it was temporary, that I was doing it for them. But over time it just got easier to avoid the calls, to skip the visits. It's harder to face the people you love when you know you might have let some of them down. Lily frowned, surprised. Let them down? Lucas, you've built an empire. Anyone would be proud of you. He laughed softly, but without humor. Professional success doesn't erase what you leave behind. I missed so many important moments. My older brother's wedding, the birth of my nephew. My mom still sends me messages sometimes, but there's always this distant tone, like she doesn't want to bother me. There was a moment of silence. Lily felt a lump in her throat, but didn't know what to say to lighten the burden Lucas carried. Instead, she simply squeezed his arm lightly. A small gesture, but one that seemed to mean far more than any words could. And you? Lucas asked suddenly, turning to her. You talk about perseverance in your book. What does it mean to you? Lily hesitated, but knew that after everything he had shared, she needed to be honest as well. Perseverance means continuing, even when the world keeps throwing obstacles in your way, she began, her eyes drifting to a point somewhere in the room. After my parents died, I had to take on everything. My brother Max was only 5 at the time. He got sick not long after, and since then it's been a constant struggle. Doctors, medicine, bills. There are so many times I wonder if I'll be able to keep going. Lucas listened to her with a rare focus he seldom gave anyone. Each of her words seemed to resonate within him, as if he saw a reflection of his own struggles in her. But you keep going, anyway, he said, more as a statement than a question. Lily nodded, a faint smile on her lips. I don't have a choice. Max needs me, and I'm not going to let him down. For a moment, the two sat in silence, sharing a quiet but profound connection. Each understood the weight the other carried, and in some way, that understanding brought them closer in a way neither had expected. The next morning, Evelyn found Lily in the kitchen, sipping coffee as she stared out the window. The housekeeper smiled, sensing something different in the air. "You seem more thoughtful today," she commented, sitting down beside her. Lily smiled, stirring her coffee with a spoon. "It's funny. I never imagined Lucas could be so human. He's always seemed so unreachable, but last night he talked about things I don't think he usually shares." Evelyn nodded, her expression warm. "He doesn't usually let his guard down. You managed to make him do it. I don't know how, but I think he needs this. Maybe you came into his life at just the right moment." Lily laughed, shaking her head. "I don't know if he feels the same way, and to be honest, it doesn't matter. I just hope he can face his own ghosts. No one should carry so much weight alone." Evelyn held Lily's hand in a maternal gesture. "Sometimes all someone needs is a person willing to listen, and you've already done that." Meanwhile, Lucas sat at his desk at Zenith Robotics, reviewing reports for one of the new projects, but his mind kept drifting back to the night before. Lily had stirred something inside him, something he couldn't quite name. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone, and that was both terrifying and invigorating. His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from Alejandro. "Lucas, about last night. Congratulations on the dinner. But more importantly, congratulations on Lily. She's extraordinary. Don't let someone like her slip away. See you soon." Lucas set the phone on the desk, reflecting on Alejandro's words. He knew Lily was extraordinary. The question was he ready to let someone like her into his life? The next morning, Lucas was restless. He usually started his days buried in spreadsheets and reports, but this time his mind was elsewhere. Something about his conversation with Lily the previous night kept echoing in his thoughts. She had been like a mirror, reflecting a truth he had been avoiding. His life was a collection of professional achievements, but emotionally it was a desert. Meanwhile, Lily spent her morning at the small cafe where she worked. The feeling of normalcy was almost a relief, but at the same time she couldn't get Lucas out of her thoughts. He was like a puzzle she wanted to solve, and, against all odds, she felt she had forged a genuine connection with him. When her shift ended, she found a folded note in her apron. It was an invitation from Lucas to have dinner at his apartment that night. At 8 o'clock, Lily knocked on the door of the luxurious apartment. Lucas opened it, looking different from his usual serious and formal self. He wasn't wearing a tie, his shirt sleeves were rolled up, and his expression was softer. It was as if, for one evening, he had decided to abandon the flawless facade he always wore. "I thought a more casual dinner would be fitting," he said, leading her to the dining room where Evelyn had already set the table with simple yet carefully arranged dishes. Lily laughed as she sat down. "So now you're trying to impress me with simplicity?" Lucas shrugged with a faint smile. "Maybe I'm just trying to figure out how to do things differently." The dinner began with light conversation, but gradually it grew more personal. Lucas opened up about his childhood in Tulsa, about how his father always said the key to happiness was building something meaningful. Lily, in turn, shared stories about her childhood with Max, about how he always made her laugh even on the hardest days. "You talk a lot about your brother," Lucas remarked, as he finished a piece of apple pie Evelyn had made. "It seems like he's a big part of your life." "He is," Lily replied, her eyes shining. "Max means everything to me. When our parents passed away, I promised I'd do everything I could to give him a good life. It hasn't been easy, but he gives me the strength to keep going." Lucas nodded, silently admiring the strength she carried. For the first time, it felt like he was sitting across from someone who truly understood what it was like to carry the weight of the world. "Have you ever thought about giving yourself a chance?" he asked suddenly. Lily frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "In yourself," Lucas clarified, looking directly at her. "You're always so focused on Max, on bills, on the next challenge, but what about your own dreams? What about your book?" Lily was quiet for a moment. No one had ever asked her that so directly. "Sometimes it feels like there's no room for that," she admitted. "Writing is my dream, but it feels so far removed from my reality." Lucas leaned forward slightly. "Maybe you need to stop thinking about how far away it seems and start thinking about the first step to get there. Sometimes all we need to do is begin, even if it's small." Lily gave a shy but genuine smile. "Are you always this practical?" Lucas chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Not always, but lately I've been learning that some things are worth the risk." The atmosphere lightened, but Lucas's words lingered with Lily. He seemed to see something in her that she had been trying to ignore for a long time. "And what about you?" Lily asked, breaking the silence. "What are your dreams?" Lucas paused for a moment, as if it was the first time in years that someone had asked him that. "I guess I've never really stopped to think about it. I've always been focused on building Zenith, on being successful, on achieving goals. But now," he hesitated, looking at Lily, "maybe my dreams are changing." The silence between them was comfortable, filled with something unspoken but deeply felt. It was as if both were, in their own way, learning to open up again. "You know, Lucas," Lily began, her expression thoughtful, "maybe the dreams that really matter are the ones that scare us." He smiled slightly, a kind of smile she hadn't seen from him before. "In that case, I think I'm on the right path." The night continued with that same gentle intensity, and when Lily finally left the apartment, something between them had shifted. Perhaps it was a newfound understanding, or maybe it was just the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name. As she walked through the brightly lit streets, the memory of the dinner fresh in her mind, Lucas stood at the door, watching her disappear into the distance. For the first time, he felt there was a real possibility of opening the door to someone in his life, and strangely, it didn't feel as frightening as it once had. "Maybe you just need to take the first step. I know it feels impossible, but sometimes all we need is a little courage." Lucas's words struck Lily in an unexpected way. It was ironic, she thought, that someone so withdrawn and trapped in his own bubble was encouraging her to take a risk. In the days that followed, the relationship between Lucas and Lily continued to evolve. He started visiting her at the cafe in Wicker Park, always sitting in the same corner and ordering the same coffee, while she teased him about becoming predictable. Lily, in turn, visited Lucas at Zenith Robotics, where he showed her new projects and let her experience his world up close. However, life, as it often does, found a way to test the fragile connection the two were building. One day, while Lily was at the cafe, she received an unexpected phone call. It was from a local publisher. They had read a short story she had submitted months ago and wanted to discuss the possibility of publishing a full book based on her writing. It was the opportunity she had always dreamed of, but there was a catch. The publisher was based in New York. At the same time, Lucas was facing a dilemma at his company. Alejandro had proposed a merger with a European corporation that could expand Zenith Robotics to a global level. However, this would require Lucas to move to Munich for at least 2 years. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, but for the first time, he found himself thinking about what he might be leaving behind. That evening, Lucas and Lily met again at his apartment. The atmosphere was different. Both carried the same hesitant expression, as if they knew there was something important that needed to be said. "I got a call today," Lily began before Lucas could speak. "A publisher in New York wants to publish my book." Lucas felt a pang in his chest, but kept his expression neutral. "That's amazing, Lily. It's everything you've always wanted." "It is," she replied, hesitating. "But it would mean leaving Chicago, leaving you." There was a tense silence between them until Lucas took a deep breath. "I also got an offer. A merger that would take Zenith to the next level, but it would take me to Europe." Lily looked away, trying to process the information. For weeks, she had tried not to think about what she felt for Lucas, but now, with the possibility of losing him, everything seemed clearer. "So what do we do?" she finally asked. Lucas stood up, walking over to the window. The view of the city, which once felt like his only companion, was now a reminder of the emptiness he felt. "I don't know," he admitted, turning to face her. "But I know I don't want to lose what we have." Lily felt tears sting her eyes but forced a smile. "Neither do I, but maybe what we have now is enough." Lucas stepped closer, holding her hands. "Maybe. But if there's one thing you've taught me, it's that we need to take risks. And if you go to New York, I want you to know I'll be rooting for you. Always." Lily nodded, the tears finally spilling over. She knew it was the right thing to do, but that didn't make saying goodbye any less painful. Weeks later, Lily moved to New York, while Lucas stayed in Chicago, preparing for his new chapter in Europe. They promised to stay in touch, but both knew that distance would be a challenge. Still, something had changed forever. Lily began to write with more passion than ever, her words fueled by the memories of Lucas and everything she had learned from him. Lucas, for his part, started reconnecting with his family, sending messages to his mother and siblings, trying to make up for lost time. Though apart, both continued to grow, carrying with them the lessons they had learned together. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone follow their own path while you follow yours. If you enjoyed this heartfelt story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We share stories like this almost every day, and there are plenty more waiting for you in the links on the screen. Thanks for watching.